Elon Musk was having a terrible day. He had been working on his latest rocket launch, but everything seemed to be going wrong. Frustrated and overwhelmed, he decided to take a break and check his Twitter feed. As he scrolled through his feed, he saw that people were calling him a space Karen and making fun of his latest outburst of suspending reporters from Twitter. Elon couldn't believe it. How dare these people speak ill of him like this? He was the CEO of SpaceX and owner of Twitter, for goodness sake. Enraged, Elon took to Twitter to unleash his fury. Who do these people think they are, calling me a space Karen? I'm the CEO of SpaceX. I own this platform. I demand respect, he tweeted. But as the minutes ticked by, Elon's anger only seemed to grow. He couldn't believe that people would dare to question him or his actions. I'm going to Mars, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop me. I'll show them all. I'll be the greatest space Karen of all time, he tweeted. As the tweets continued to roll in, Elon's followers began to worry about his state of mind. Some tried to calm him down, but he was beyond reason. He was completely consumed by his anger and his desire for revenge. Eventually, even Elon's followers had enough of his insane rantings. They reported his tweets and had his account suspended. As he sat in his office, staring at a blank screen clutching his computer's mouse, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of entitlement. Although he knew that he had let his emotions get the best of him, he was kicked off of his own platform. He owned Twitter and he couldn't even use it. On Twitter, many people saw him as a fascist, trying to control everything and everyone around him. They called for a boycott of SpaceX and started a social media campaign to spread the word with the hashtag, Elon as a space Karen. Elon knew that he had a lot of work to do to repair his reputation. He knew that he needed to be more mindful of his behavior, and he made a conscious effort to keep his emotions in check. He realized that as the CEO of a major company, he had a responsibility to set a good example, and he was determined to do just that, but unfortunately he even failed at that basic of tasks. As the days passed, Elon's anger and frustration only seemed to grow. He couldn't understand why people were so against him and his plans for Twitter and going to Mars. He began to see enemies everywhere, and he was convinced that there was a conspiracy against him. One day, as he was walking through the SpaceX headquarters, he saw one of his employees wearing a shirt with the words, Space Karen, on it. Elon couldn't believe it. He saw red and flew into a rage. Without a second thought, he lunged at the employee, his fists flying. The employee was taken by surprise and fell to the ground, trying to defend himself as Elon pummeled him mercilessly. Blood caked Elon's clenched fists as he punched the man repeatedly. The other employees rushed to intervene, pulling Elon off the poor man and restraining him until he calmed down. When he finally came to his senses, Elon was shocked by what he had done. He couldn't believe that he had allowed his anger to get the best of him and turn violent. As he was led away by security, Elon knew that he had hit rock bottom. He knew that he needed help, and he resolved to seek out therapy and work on his anger management issues. It would be a long and difficult journey, but he was determined to turn his life around and be the kind of person that he knew he could be, the ultimate space Karen. Elon had plans. He had always been used to getting his way, and the fact that he was stuck with a $44 billion company that he was locked out of was driving him crazy. Elon wanted to leave Earth, so he visited the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. He marched up to the mission control room and demanded to speak to the manager. When the NASA representative tried to explain that they were in charge of all Mars missions, Elon wouldn't listen. I want to speak to the manager, he shouted, his voice echoing through the corridors of mission control. I demand to be treated with the respect and dignity that I deserve. Astronauts and NASA staff tried to calm Elon down, but he was having none of it. He was determined to get what he wanted, no matter what the cost. Finally, after much arguing and pleading, Elon was allowed to speak with the manager of Kennedy Space Center. But instead of finding the understanding and support he was looking for, he was met with a stern lecture about how his behavior was unacceptable and how he needed to learn to work as part of a team. Elon was furious, and he stormed out of the Space Center, vowing to never set foot on NASA property again. He may have been a successful businessman and entrepreneur, but when it came to space travel, he was nothing more than a space Karen, unable to handle the challenges and realities of life in orbit. Elon Musk eventually became so frustrated with Twitter and NASA that he decided to take matters into his own hands. He spent months designing and building his own personal rocket, determined to escape the constraints of Earth and start a new life on Mars. As he prepared for liftoff, Elon couldn't shake the feeling of anger and betrayal. He had always been a vocal and influential user on Twitter, and the fact that his account had been suspended only fueled his determination to leave the planet behind. He was the owner of a platform that he couldn't even use, and the entire Earth now referred to him as Space Karen. Finally, in 2030 the day of the launch arrived, and Elon climbed aboard his rocket, ready to blast off into the unknown. As he lifted off the ground and soared through the atmosphere, he couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and freedom. However, when he arrived on Mars, Elon was in for a surprise. The Martian colonists had already established a society, and they had no interest in letting Elon Musk disrupt their way of life. They had even formed a union called the Democratic People's Martian Collectivists to protect their rights and interests. Elon was immediately ostracized, and he soon found himself alone and isolated on the Red Planet. He had left Earth in a fit of anger and frustration, but now he realized that he had nowhere else to go. As he sat in his lonely little habitat, staring out at the barren landscape, Elon couldn't help but think about how much he missed Twitter. He had been so foolish to think that he could escape his problems by leaving the planet. And now, he was stuck on Mars, with no way to communicate with the outside world and no one to turn to for support. In the end, Elon learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, it's better to face your problems head-on, rather than running away from them. Eventually, far in the future, when Elon has his neural link implanted and returned to Earth, he would go back to his lavish lifestyle, never giving another thought to the people he had hurt or offended. He was too blinded by his own wealth and privilege to see the suffering of those around him, and he would continue to live in his insulated bubble, oblivious to the struggles of the outside world.